Hi, welcome. It looks like we're having quite a few people join us today. We are so grateful for such a robust crowd. So we're starting to let people in a little bit early just so you have some time to get settled. As you'll see, you have your video capabilities on for this. This is a meeting. We encourage people to be on and ready to participate. As you settle in, I would love to encourage all of you to use the chat box to your right. Introduce yourself, say your organizational affiliation, if you so please. Tell us where you're signing in from, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Welcome everyone joining us. We are asking everyone to use the chat box today to introduce themselves as we all trickle in. We have a pretty robust crowd for Patrick's presentation today, so just give us a couple more minutes and then we can get started. Quick reminder too, we are going to be recording this session, so if you don't feel comfortable to be on video, that's completely okay. We want to respect your comfort. And I will invite you, you can turn off your video but still participate by using the bottom left button with the camera. I'm seeing some introductions in the chat. Hello, everyone.
On Zoom, you mean?
All right. So we are at 10 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and get started just because we have such a full morning with Patrick today. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for LinkedIn Tips and Tools, Creating a Roadmap for Job and Networking Prospects. It's kind of a long name, but lots of stuff to cover. My name is Jenny Lynn Tumalad, and I am the Program Specialist here at the Center for Nonprofit Leadership. I'm thrilled to be joined here today by Patrick Ward, who is new to the CNL family of facilitators, yet is very seasoned in his work with LinkedIn. Patrick is the Director of Marketing for Rootstrap and is a writer by trade and has been featured in Forbes and Business Insider. Aside from his role at Rootstrap, Patrick is an accomplished speaker and trainer, which you will all soon see, teaching LinkedIn workshops at General Assembly and the Nonprofit Learning Lab. He also is the co-host and founder of #LinkedInLocalLA, a networking community in Los Angeles. And I remember the first time meeting Patrick, it was actually at a networking event. And the first thing I learned really quickly about him was his passion for LinkedIn. So I'm very grateful that we have stayed connected and he has the opportunity to share his passion and experience with you all now. So before I hand it over to Patrick, I want to bring your attention to a couple logistics for our time together today. I see many familiar CNL faces out there on video as well as in the chat box. So just bear with me while I walk through this again for the new faces out there. So I'm going to point out just a couple Zoom functions that I'd like to highlight for all of us, which are the camera function, the mic function, chat box, and reactions. First is the camera function. As many of you know, you are on camera right now. There's a couple of us that have chosen not to be. We would really welcome you to be on camera, but we want to respect your comfortability with what you want to show with us today. So if you want to turn your camera off, as I had mentioned at the very earlier part of this meeting, you can use that stop video button right in the lower left to turn your camera on and off. Your camera will disappear, but you will still be able to talk and engage with the content and dialogue. Second is the mute function. So during the times when Patrick is presenting his slides, I'd like to ask everyone to mute their mics, which can be done through the mic button on the left, right next to the camera button. As you'll see, you'll still stay on camera, but you can keep any noise pollution from distracting from Patrick's presentation by using this mute function. Next is our chat box, which many of you have been already playing around with today, which is at the bottom right. We really encourage you to use this to respond to the presentation, chat any of your classmates privately, or you can also use it to either contact me privately if you end up having any kind of troubleshooting issues, or you can also contact Patrick privately in case you have any kind of private questions that you wouldn't really want to say like through audio. So to select someone to chat with privately, you can actually click the drop-down menu, which is in the chat box, and then select the person that you want to chat. So if you want to chat me, Jenny Lynn Tumalad, you can find my name at the very top of that drop-down menu. And finally, this one is a fun one. It is reactions. If there are things that either Patrick or your classmates do or say that you feel passionate about, please feel free to use some of your reactions. You'll find the button also at the bottom of your screen, a little bit to the right, because sometimes interrupting and just saying like, yes, that's such a good idea, it really isn't appropriate sometimes through Zoom and it doesn't translate well, but we still really want you to find a way to interact, and you can use those by clicking that button. It's either thumbs up or clapping. Use that for your classmates, use it for Patrick, use it for yourself. So again, if you have any issues, please feel free to chat me, and I will also be placing my cell phone number in the chat box. You can use that to text or call me if you end up getting kicked off of the Zoom. We really want to help you with any troubleshooting problems. And without further ado, I will be handing it over to Patrick.
Thanks, Jenilyn. And very glad to be here. Really excited to be partnering with the Center for Nonprofit Leadership at Cal Lutheran to present to all of you today. So I'm very excited to share with you some insights from my experience with LinkedIn. But the first thing I want to ask, and feel free to put it in the chat, or feel free if you feel confident enough to say it out loud, why are you guys here? What brought you to this workshop today? What was your motivation for joining?
Mine is I'm seeing my business competition, and they're putting up all kinds of tips on LinkedIn, and I don't know how to do that. So that's what got me interested, my competition.
Excellent, Lisa. Anyone else feel strong enough to share?
Hi, this is Laura Klein. I just feel like LinkedIn has so much greater potential that I am not familiar enough with it to use, and I really want to learn how to use it better because I've seen some amazing things. And it's also, this is just a great networking opportunity in itself as well.
Excellent, Laura. Glad to have you here.
This is Kathy Palazzolo, and I agree with what Laura just said. I've been out of the workforce for quite a while, and I think that LinkedIn is a really good tool to help find job opportunities. I want to learn how to use it.
Fantastic, Kathy. Glad to have you with us. Thank you. We got one more.
And I'd like to use it more effectively. I mean, I have a LinkedIn page, but I just kind of do the basics, and so I just want to learn a little bit more how to use it effectively for job searches as well as just networking.
Excellent, Tammy. Well, you're absolutely in the right place, and that's a lot of why we're here today, because a lot of people encounter this, right? They've heard a lot about LinkedIn, that LinkedIn is this great opportunity, but they don't know where to start. And I, to be fair, was in a very similar place about 2 to 3 years ago, where I had a LinkedIn profile, I did the basics, but didn't actually invest time in the platform. So I want to cover here a couple of the learning objectives of what I hope that you gain out of today's workshop. We're going to start with profile optimization. So how we turn our profile into the ideal resume, because most of the time our profiles look very static if we do very little with them. We want to turn that into being very dynamic so that it starts driving the inquiries that each of you want. You know, the types of job offers or recruiters reaching out, or even when you do reach out to someone, that they're interested enough in what you have to offer because you have a good profile. We're going to go through a daily strategy. Now, a lot of people, and myself included, feel like there's this never-ending barrage of social media networks, right? First it was Facebook, then it's Twitter, then someone says Instagram, now someone says TikTok, and now someone's saying LinkedIn. But I want to show you very specifically what can be achieved with literally 1 hour or less per day. And then finally, we're going to go through some tips or tricks, because every single social media platform has unique quirks, and that is different to every other social media platform. And you're not necessarily going to know these quirks unless you've spent some time on the platform. I want to give you guys a head start so you can see and not make any mistakes on the platform straight out the gate. So let's start with profile optimization. First and foremost, we talk about what is known as above the fold. When I say above the fold, I'm saying the first thing that someone sees when they come to your profile. So needless to say, it is your headshot, it is your cover photo, is your name, and is most specifically your headline. Now, a lot of people make this mistake. They have a headline that is simply what they do, or it's their job title at company. What we really want to be thinking about here is who do you help and how do you help them? And the key here is putting keywords into that headline that you would want to be found for. So I use this as an example because I am both a writer and a marketer. So I put those in my headline. I'm also for tech companies, hence why I put iOS, Android, web. We want to be thinking, what are the keywords that you can use and incorporate into your headline so that you are found and that it is very clear that someone looking at it, like a recruiter, understands what you do. We then look at the summary. The summary is often used to just be a very brief description. A lot of people make that mistake. Really what we're trying to do with the summary is drive a call to action. And that call to action can be as simple as an email or a phone number. That's what I use with mine. You see, I put a few description about the company that I'm working for. In this case, for a job seeker, we want to put some information here about what type of companies you help, how you help them. These are the things that we want to be focusing on. But before I go on, I want to point out a new feature that many people might not be aware of, and that's the name pronunciation. As you can see right next to my name, here we've got a little microphone. That microphone says my name in 10 seconds or more. Sorry, 10 seconds or less. And that 10 seconds is crucial because by having that 10 seconds, it shows me how people can pronounce my name, as well as they are able to hear my voice. And this is a crucial benefit that people are able to start to get a little glimpse of your personality, to start to understand who you are beyond just mere words. That's how you start to build rapport. That's how you start to make a connection with a recruiter beyond just the flatness that is a standard resume. So let's now look a little bit further to that summary. How do you articulate what you do? So I want to start here with an example that I've used. I simply call out who I am, a senior marketing executive. And then I focus on problems. A lot of people focus on tasks. Now the problem with focusing on tasks is that tasks can be in many ways done by anyone. What we want to be thinking about are what are the problems that a business is stuck on, and therefore what are the solutions that you as an employee or a potential employee can provide. So in this case, we think, I'm good with press. I'm good with SEO, content, events. These are the areas that we want to highlight. So I want to challenge each and every one of you. Think of what are the 3 to 4 areas that you over the course of your career have done particularly well. If someone came to you tomorrow and offered you a job, what is something you could say with full confidence knowing that would give that business a huge boost? And like I said before, we don't want to be focusing on tasks. We want to be listing accomplishments. So don't just say, oh, I performed this task, or I focused on this admin or this area. Quantify it. Get some results. Think about what is a number you can put behind. If not a number that ties to revenue, at least a number that ties to ROI. You'll notice with each of these, I always focus on what is a way I can quantify the impact of what I do. Because that's what's going to be appealing, right? Why does anyone hire? They hire you because the amount of money that they pay you, i.e. your salary and benefits, is less than the value they gain to their business. So you need to show them, hey, you might hire me for $50,000 a year, but you're going to get $150,000 worth of value to your business. You know, every business is thinking in terms of a cost versus profit. So when we go down further to our experiences section, we also not only want to quantify them, but we want to help them pop. We want to make them visually appealing when a recruiter is coming to our profile and seeing, is this person someone interesting, someone that I want to speak to? So I say use media. You can attach media to different sections of your experience that not only highlight your past accomplishments, but help make the profile stand out. Moving on to volunteer experience. This is where you can start showing more of your personality. Show that you're more than just a workaholic. It's also a useful section for you when you're investigating potential recruiters or co-workers. It could be a conversation starter for you. As you can see here, I put my previous training and guest lecturing. And needless to say, Cal Lutheran will be added to this afterwards. Because we all are not just our job. You are hiring a person after all. So show off that personality with other areas of yourself that you care about and that you want to show to a potential employer. You want to take a time to focus on skills here, because skills have changed. Skills used to show all the different skills that you had at any one time. But now what has happened is they've only shown the top 3 skills, and that these top 3 skills are not arbitrarily chosen, but chosen by you. So as you can see here, social media and marketing I choose because they are my primary business. But obviously I'm trying to increase my public speaking. So hence why I put speaker there. So that people are likely to endorse these top 3 skills more than any other skill that you have. Because again, they have to click the show more. It has to bring out an extra drop down area, and they're just unlikely to do it as a result. So it's much better to think in terms of these 3 skills. What are the top 3 skills that you would A, want to be hired for, B, that provide the most impact to a business, and C, an area that you yourself are passionate about. Even if you have experience in an area, if you don't want to do that skill going forward, don't highlight it. And take a quiz. So now skills now have a quiz area where you can show off your expertise. They're very short. They're about 15 questions long. Funnily enough, I actually just took one of these this morning about SEO. Most of them are coding tests, but you are starting to see other areas. Adobe products, if you're familiar with any of those, they've got quizzes on that. And Microsoft suite of services, they also have stuff on that. Likely to increase over time, adding more and more. It's just a nice social proof way of proving that you have the expertise that you are claiming to have. When we move on to recommendations, we want to be thinking about past managers, co-workers, clients, anyone who works either who has worked directly with you. It doesn't just have to be a boss. A lot of people make this mistake. They think, oh, the only person who should be giving me recommendations is my past manager. Well, that is still true, but remember that you don't work in a silo. You still work with other people. Another great way to get recommendations is lead with it. Start by giving another person, maybe it's a former coworker, a recommendation. Because by making someone else feel good, they will be more likely to reciprocate in turn and therefore give to you a favorable recommendation as well. But another key thing here is pre-write the recommendations. So when you go through and you make a request of someone for them to recommend you, what you want to do is give them some options. So right here where it says, could you write me a recommendation? You can edit that. And you can write a tailored recommendation to give them some inspiration. This is a great strategy because often when we look at a blank piece of paper, it's difficult to come up with the right things to say. Frame it for them. If you write out a recommendation that's pre-written, even if they want to chop and change it a bit to put it in their words, what you are doing is making sure that they're writing a recommendation in a way that will allow you to be positioned for the type of job that you are trying to go after. This is pretty crucial. If you want to be positioned as, a senior marketer, then have that written in. If you want to be positioned as, an excellent technologist, put that in. Whatever area you want to be positioned as, pre-write it because people find it a lot easier to use something when they've got inspiration in front of them. Awards and publications, a very underutilized area. Think of the awards that not only you yourself have received, but that companies that you've worked at have received. Because the fact is that each and every one of you, when your company receives an award, you have some credit in that. You have contributed to that company's success. It's a good way to, again, bring more social proof, bring more demonstration of the value you bring organizations. Publications. It doesn't just have to be press. These publications can also be any sort of blog article that you've written. Maybe you wrote for your company's blog at some point. Anything that shows more of your character, more of your personality, more of your thoughts on your industry, anything demonstrating thought leadership should be placed in this publications section. I myself use it for my Forbes and Ad Age articles that get published pretty regularly. It's a good way to consistently prove that, yes, I am a legitimate writer because, as I said before, that is something that's really important to me. I always want to be perceived as a good writer and then also receive writing gigs. How do you get that? You get that through making sure publications there are demonstrating that. But I want to stress in all this that profile optimization is a constant work. It doesn't just happen in a silo. Because what we will talk about later on is about how we evaluate how our profiles are performing. And there are certain metrics that we'll be able to look at. And so the key is not to just leave it static, but to be constantly tweaking with it. Now, needless to say, once you do the big heavy lifting that may be required, it doesn't take that long. We're talking maybe, a couple of minutes a week just to check over. But the point is you want to always not be resting on your laurels. You want to be constantly putting in new achievements, new updates, new language, anything that might help position you successfully in order to get that next job. So right now I want to open it to you guys from a little area here of this poll. What is the area that needs the biggest improvement on this profile? Is it the headline? Is it the cover photo? Is it the headshot? Or is it the about section? I see we've got a few votes coming through. Quite a few for the about. And like with anything, there isn't a necessarily perfect answer for this, but there is an answer that is better than most. I'll give a couple more beers. Headline, cover photo, headshot, or about. Headline, cover photo, headshot, or about. And we'll end it there. It seems very definitively everyone is saying about, which is interesting because yes, you are correct. There is always additional work that can be done in the about. But the thing I want to draw your attention to here is actually the cover photo. So the three of you that said cover photo, you are correct. And the reason why we say the cover photo is because it is free real estate. It is free real estate for us to drive a very specific call to action that we want. And in this case, yes, it provides some social proof. Yes, it provides, a fairly generic picture of where I'm based, i.e. LA, as many of us are. But needless to say, there could be more to it. And that's why I say, as the next one, you can see how this cover photo changed. It started going into putting some social proof, as we see with the Forbes Inc. entrepreneur and the products built for Disney, Salesforce, and Ericsson. It has a clear tagline about what it is involving. So while this tagline is for a company, we can think about how does a tagline work for you, what specifically about what you offer as a job seeker. And it has contact information. Again, it doesn't take much to do. Think a tool like Canva, which you can make very nifty cover photos with not a lot of graphic design experience. And I know I'm not a graphic designer myself, but it is not that hard to make something in that looks clean, but more importantly, maximizes the use of that real estate. But regardless, you definitely need a cover photo. You might have seen that a lot of people have these blue circles that are connected. That is the generic profile, and it very quickly looks like to a recruiter, to a potential company that you're looking for, that you haven't taken the time to nurture and care about your LinkedIn profile. And it does send a bad impression, unfortunately. So at least have something there, but it is very important to maximize the use of it. As I said, headers can be used to drive a customized CTA. So in this case, you can see this woman uses coach and mentor, speaker, host of a podcast. There are many different options you can use. And again, very simple. There's not a lot of graphic design here, but it allows you to catch the eye, to get people involved with your profile and to read a bit more about you, as opposed to glazing over and moving on to the next person. Now, one thing you might have seen very recently is these open to work stickers or overlays that happen on your profile, on your headshot. You'll also see down below at the bottom, open to work to the various different roles. Now, I've got a fairly controversial opinion on this, but I have vetted it via recruiters. These features don't work. They don't work because recruiters are looking for people that are hard to discover. When they see this on your profile, they assume that you are going to apply via application portals, career pages, Indeed, LinkedIn jobs, these sorts of things. The problem with that is you get run through applicant tracking systems. And by being run through those systems, A, you run the risk of your resume being filtered out at the very start. Or B, even if a resume is seen, your average recruiter spends 6 seconds looking at it. It's not a lot of time. And more likely than not, you are going to be filtered out for the role. As we were talking about in terms of motivation for many people joining today, it's networking. That is the biggest way that you get roles. And so if that's the case, you want to be rather positioning yourself as a consultant rather than someone just seeking employment. Now, it's a tough line to balance. This is certainly something that I recently balanced when I was looking for my current position that I'm at now. I actually went in with a consultant's mindset. I was expecting to get a consulting gig out of it, and then it turned into a full-time offer. But that is the way to get success in this, because when you show yourself to being too open, again, it's that classic human case of people like things that are somewhat scarce, because scarcity equals value to the human mind. So as much as these tools have been useful, and LinkedIn has, certainly thrown itself behind them in terms of putting open to work as a hashtag and showing those roles, I can tell you this gentleman here is a friend of mine and is going down the entrepreneur route because he's not getting many inquiries. I myself have told him it's because you're looking too open to new work. You need to position yourself as a consultant first, then you will be seen as desirable by recruiters. And now that we've gone through that, we're going to look at a couple of profiles. I'm going to pull them up on my screen, and I want you to take a few minutes to look over them and critique them. We're going to be either, if you're comfortable dropping them in the chat, drop your thoughts in the chat. In addition, I would love to hear some of your feedback out loud. So I'm going to open up these profiles now, and we're going to take a look together. So I'm going to slowly go down through the profiles. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to take some notes, to see what needs improvement on these profiles. So feel free to jot down your thoughts. And I'll slowly go down. We're looking, based on what we've talked about so far, what are the things that could be improved about this profile? How would it be better positioned? We'll keep going down for this profile. And there we are at the end. So I want to open the floor. Anyone feel brave enough to share what they think some of the improvements that could be made to this profile?
Well, first, his background there is pretty dark. Even his photo of himself is kind of obscure. Could be a little bit closer. That's just a thought.
That's an excellent point, Lisa. You're absolutely right. For a headshot, we want it to be pretty close because obviously it's a very small picture. So you want it to be pretty much close in on your face and maybe the top part of your shoulders. That's a good suggestion.
His headline is just a job title rather than, you know, what he does.
Excellent point. Yeah, like we talked about, it's not ideal to put job title or even seeking job title. It doesn't really say anything about what he does on his day-to-day. What is the difference that he makes for businesses? What else can we point out?
There are some contributions in the chat box saying we have Janet Brown talking about how the user could add contact information in the headshot area.
Very much so. Yes, there's no way to get in touch with this person unless we message them. Now, the problem with message, right, is that you need to connect with the person first and then you're able to message. And that relies on them accepting. You want to provide as many avenues for people to contact you as possible.
I also believe that in the About section, it seems to be more task-oriented versus, I believe you said, like the problem and the solutions, you know, that we will bring to a company to make us more attractive.
Absolutely. That's a really good suggestion. Notice how, and this follows on into the experience section. Here we see drive PR strategy and execution. Well, what was the result of that? What specifically about it? I mean, again, it lumps this person in with the rest of PR specialists and doesn't distinguish him from any of those others. It's very important that we have both the problems that you solve and the solution, because that's ultimately why people hire. They have a particular problem and you are the solution, right? You are presenting yourself as the solution to their business problem. So we need to explicitly call that out. Anything else we want to call out? One thing I wanted to mention is that in this featured section, it is useful to put articles here, but if your article doesn't have an image like this gray box is essentially the default when there is no image, it looks a little unprofessional. I'd be choosing a different link to share, or maybe I'd be sharing a picture instead. Again, you just want to really make sure that your first impression is very solid. Another thing to point out here is this people also viewed section. In your settings, you are able to deactivate this section. And you want to do that for a very specific reason, because likely who is going to be suggested alongside you is people who are similar to you. Maybe they're also looking for work. As we know, a lot of people are looking for work right now, hence why many of you chose to join today. So why would we put in front of a recruiter a ready list of people that they could compare you to. Again, it's a little thing. It's not like they're not going to be able to find them, but we want to give people every reason to focus on you and not to be distracted by others. So I'd certainly encourage you, go into your settings to deactivate this section. Let's move on to the other profile, and we'll see what we can glean from this. So once again, I will slowly scroll down through it. And again, would love all of your participation. Those were great suggestions, by the way. Really, really good stuff.
Patrick?
Yes.
Question, is it possible to move things around? Like if you wanted to put your, excuse me, experience higher up on the screen so people didn't have to scroll so far down, can you move things around, like put that above activity?
You can't move it above activity. You can move things around within the section.
Got it.
So for example, here in experience, you would be able to move, say, for example, this girl was trying to get a job in entertainment and they wanted to downplay service time. They could move NBC Universal higher. But unfortunately, the actual sections themselves are static when it comes to the formula of headshot, cover photo, headline, down to the about, then the activity. Because again, we must remember that the whole point of LinkedIn is trying to keep users on the platform. So the reason why they want to show activity is they're trying to get you to go down the rabbit hole of engaging with a lot of content so you spend more time on the platform. And hence why I made that emphasis of the cover photo, right? The cover photo being a key piece of real estate that people are going to encounter first and foremost. So we want to make sure we leverage that early in order to entice people to read more, as opposed to them clicking off. So I'll just keep scrolling down here.
Nick, what's your thoughts about not having the jobs or activity in chronological order versus what you want them to focus on?
My personal opinion is what I've often done is either I've moved positions that I don't want to be included, knowing that I'm pitching for certain jobs, or I've deleted them entirely and added them back later. Generally speaking, it's kind of the same level of customization you want to do with a resume. So the way I look with a resume is I have a template that I use, but then I customize it based on the job. Because knowing the stats, as I mentioned before, that your average recruiter spends 6 seconds looking at your profile, you want to make sure that you hit them with what you want them to know about you in as short a time frame as possible. So it's kind of that case of you want to be spoon feeding them, because by spoon feeding your recruiter exactly the information you want them to know, they can put you in that box. And you ultimately want them to put you in the box of move on to interview stage as opposed to discard and send rejection email. Really, everything that we're talking about today is just trying to get you to interview stage. Because once you get to interview stage, then you can start showing more of your personality. You can start building human rapport. What we're trying to make sure is that you don't get filtered out before that stage purely because your recruiter was strapped for time and didn't want to be bothered to think. Some recruiters that I've spoken to have said they can be looking at as many as 100 to 200 applications a day. So they're very strapped for time. So the easier you can make it for them to understand who you are and what you do, the better.
Patrick, I have a question related to that.
Yes.
What does that have to do with algorithms? Is there something that we can do to make ourselves stand out with the algorithms?
Yeah, so the algorithms comes back to what I was talking about when it comes to putting keywords that you would want to be found for in your headline and also your about summary. So those two areas, it's kind of, the way to think about it is the way that Google used to be about 10 years ago. So if you've heard anything about Google, you know there was this concept known as keyword stuffing, where people put a lot of keywords into their articles just to get them to rank on Google. Google obviously wised up to that and changed their algorithm. LinkedIn hasn't done that. And I doubt whether LinkedIn will, because their level of sophistication of tech is quite a few years behind even some of their fellow players that they're compared to. So we want to be thinking in terms of what are the keywords that we can put into our headline? What are the keywords we can add into our about summary? So here, for example, as you'll see with this girl, she puts the certain skills, and this is actually very clever. She puts a lot of things like user experience design, visual design, user research, concept mapping. That is literally just stuffing those keywords in there. Now, it's not to say she doesn't do those things. She absolutely does. But by putting those skills in that about summary, it allows her to be searched, because if you're thinking in terms of who's using this search function, the more places that your profile can appear, the better. So I wanted to ask, is there anything about this profile, especially compared to the previous profile, that we want to call out that needs improvement?
She should get rid of the people also viewed.
Yep. Excellent. And just as an example, this first person, who I also know, is a direct competitor to her in terms of product designer, that exact same role. They would go up for the same position. So absolutely you want to get rid of that section.
Where do we go to get rid of that section?
So when you go to your settings and privacy, there's a section under there. The settings and privacy allows you to search for that specific section of people also viewed, and then it's a toggle button. Anything else standing out?
The cover photo is totally underutilized.
Very good, Norbert. Yep. So this is what I was talking about when I said the circles connected with lines and a blue background. It's very distinctive because it is the standard cover photo that is used if you haven't implemented a cover photo. So at a bare minimum, if there's one thing, even before all of you decide to go on Canva and start making your own, just even find a stock image just to put there as a placeholder, because it just looks a lot better than having nothing at all.
What's your take on a very recent photo versus one that you've been using for a long time that might be outdated but is more attractive?
I love the question, Janet. Honestly, I think it's less about the recency of the photo. It's more about the quality of the photo. So as you can see, this photo matches perfectly the ideal guidelines. So you want it reasonably close to your face so that people can identify you, so that it's personable to you, and that it is clear, it is not fuzzy, it doesn't have bad quality. Honestly, the photos that I've always used and encouraged people to use, if you've ever had it done professionally, use that. Obviously, it does help if they can match a photo of you reasonably well to how you look like right now. But I would say that all other things held equal, you want it to be the one that presents you in the best possible light. You just, in many ways, the headshot is just a way of inviting the recruiter or the potential coworker to see that, yes, you are a real human, you have real experience, you have a real story, and inviting them into discovering more about you. Because as we know, right, this is what they see at the start. Then they have to start scrolling and start looking further and further. The more they do that, the more invested they are in your story and the more likely they are to contact you.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, let's move on. And before I move on, is there any further questions about profile optimization specifically?
Patrick, I just was wondering, and you might have already answered this, but on the background of that profile, is there something specific, like she had all the blue with the, lines and everything. I mean, is there something that should go there that should be more?
So in this particular case, because she's a product designer, I'd be thinking, is there a particular software app that she's designed that she could put out there as some sort of social proof? Or is there some design philosophy that she has that no other designer has that she would want to call out? Naturally, for a designer, LinkedIn is a little bit more challenging than more standard design websites, things like Dribble. But nevertheless, you have to put something here. It just immediately evokes in the mind that you haven't nurtured the profile. Now, that's not true. She certainly has added experience, but what you're likely to happen is someone comes onto the profile, they see that, they think, oh, this person's not active, bounce away. So we want to put at least something there. Something is better than nothing. In an ideal world, like I said, getting onto Canva, having a little bit of social proof, tagline, and some contact information does wonders. I still get people, and I changed that cover photo of mine, I want to say this was about 6 or 7 months ago. And I've never got more inquiries than when I had that specific cover photo, because it just makes it very clear what I'm trying to get people to do. That is, talk to me.
Patrick, do you suggest using that real estate, like even to put words on to sort of advertise what you do, what you're good at? In other words, have a photo but then put words on top of it, or is that too much?
No, I think words are good, but you want to keep it short and sweet. So if I was going to change my cover photo into looking more, at the moment, as you can probably tell, it's very much geared towards business development. But if I was to change mine tomorrow to gear towards job seeking, I'd change it to senior marketing executive that transforms B2B enterprises. That's probably the length of words. So I would say something in the realm of about 6 to 8 words. Anything more than that, and it's obviously going to become illegible. So you want it short, sharp, impactful, that very clearly states what you do.
I recently was on a website where you hovered over the person's picture and it showed a different view of that same picture. Does LinkedIn have any kind of dynamic functionality regarding the headshot?
No chance, Janet. LinkedIn is still as beneficial as it is, and I say that this is someone who does very much love this platform. On the technical front, it is very archaic. in the quintessential vein of Microsoft. When Microsoft bought LinkedIn, they did very little to overhaul it from a technical perspective. And that's why I talk about using anywhere you can put media items like images, because although it's still a static image, at least it's some form of color. LinkedIn has been smeared for many years for being quote unquote boring. And unfortunately, they still don't use as many novel suggestions like you say, Janet, of a dynamic profile, for example.
Patrick, a quick question. Do you suggest uploading, for example, a capability statement or a traditional bio? So a lot of consultants, we tend to send those to clients anyway. So would you recommend attaching those PDFs to the media thing? I've done that. I don't know if that helps or not.
I think it absolutely helps. I've attached capabilities decks of our business as well, because it's the same thing. People come to us and we usually send it to them as our first port of call anyway. So there's no harm in having it on your LinkedIn profile. Again, it's just providing another area for people to find that information that you're already willing to distribute with them. As long as it doesn't contain anything proprietary, there's no issues there. Any final things, or we'll move on to the daily strategy? Okay. And there'll be other opportunities for further questions. So let's look at this 1 hour daily strategy, because I really want this to be the case for everyone on this webinar today, because so many people feel like, oh, the only people who are successful on any form of social media are those who spend 8 to 10 hours a day and it's their whole life. And that is true. I know those people, but I'm here to tell you that I certainly do not spend all my time on LinkedIn, and I've still gotten results, and you can too with this daily strategy. So I've split this up between two areas, being a post day and a non-post day. What I mean by that is that a post day is when you're putting out a piece of content. A non-post day is when you're not. Key thing here, generally speaking, you can get very good results posting somewhere in the vicinity of 2 to 3 times a week during weekdays. That's it. Doesn't have to be every day. Doesn't need to be 2 posts a day. LinkedIn gives you pretty decent traction with 2 to 3 pieces of content posted a week. So let's break it down. First step, 10 minutes a day. Find and connect with about 40 to 50 target companies and recruiters. So I'm either thinking here, recruiters at these companies, HR reps at these companies, people at these companies who have a similar position to what you're going after, people at these companies who could be your potential manager. All of these people are good to connect with. 30 minutes, you're going to post and respond to comments on your post if it's a post day. If it's a non-post day, those target companies, both employees and recruiters, we're going to go through and we're going to comment on their posts. And we're not just going to leave comments like great or awesome or very simple things that don't say anything of value. We want to leave thoughtful, reasonable comments that show both our expertise and why they would want to have a conversation with us. The general rule here is as long as your comment is longer than 6 words, it surfaces in the feed, thanks to the algorithm, more so than if you had less than 6 words. If you had less than 6 words, it's about 5 to 10% of the time in the feed. If you do more than 6 words, it's 30% of the time. Now, that's all technical mumbo jumbo for essentially saying that with more thoughtful comments, you will get wider recognition, you will be seen by more people, and more importantly, you'll be seen by people you are targeting, people who could give you a job. With 15 minutes of it a day, we're looking to respond to our DMs, that's our direct messages, and initiate new conversations. And then 5 minutes, we'll check the profile metrics and we'll adjust if needed. So let's dive into these daily activities and what it takes. So the first step is finding companies. My advice here always starts with job postings, because LinkedIn's job posting feature is pretty robust. It pulls in from a lot of the standard job boards that most of us are familiar with, the Indeeds, the ZipRecruiters. It also, because of its benefit of allowing people to apply with their profiles, is used by a substantial number of companies. But we're not going to be tempted by that. Even we see right here, that easy apply button looks very tempting. I can tell you this from very personal experience, where in about February of this year, I was looking to hire a social media coordinator, this very position I have listed here. I put out the job on LinkedIn. I got 250 responses. I just could not for the life of me go through them. I then had a referral from an employee. I interviewed that one candidate. That one candidate was the solution to the problem I had, namely I did not have someone who was adequate for social media management, and I hired that person without going through any of the other applications. Again, remember that even for a dedicated recruiter, time is precious. So they're going to go with their referrals first and only go with their applications as a last resort. But first of all, we want to make sure that at least there is a job opening that is ideal for what you're doing. So start with the job postings. But then we're going to use that information to now find people. That's the key point. So as we can see here with the people filters, there's a lot of information here we can use. We can use current companies if we're looking for a particular job. We can see whether they went to our alma mater. That's a very useful thing. We can see whether they're in the same city as us. That's a useful thing. We know that jobs are hiring many people remotely these days. You don't necessarily have to be in the same city as them. We can see industries. We can see past companies. One thing I want to really call out here is these two filters on the left. Connections, namely second degree, and connections of. Now, if you have someone in your network who has, we all have that friend, right? The serial networker, the person who seems to know everyone. We'll put their name in here. See if they know someone at a particular company you're interviewing for. And then we'll be able to ask them for an introduction. Same thing with second degree connections. When you have second degree, it means that you're 1 degree away from knowing them. So if that's the case, then you can send them a pretty personalized request saying, hey, I see we know some of the same people. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for these people in the companies who could get us that referral. And you can get very granular. So here's a search I ran just this morning. I was looking for people at Google who have the title of recruiter in the LA area who are second degree. And already I found 13 results. Again, now we can start to have a list of both people to connect to and also people who might be appropriate for what we're trying to achieve. So at this point, I usually get, when I conduct this workshop, I get questions of, do I need premium? And yes, I do have premium, but I would honestly say if you're using LinkedIn to its fullest potential on the free version, you don't really need it. Obviously, I get it because my company pays for it, and I'm very fortunate to have that be the case. But it is quite a lot of money. Usually, depending on the premium level you're getting, it's anywhere from about 40 to 50 bucks a month. It's not cheap. So I would say that if you're leveraging it the way that I've been saying, you still do not need to sign up for premium tomorrow. The big benefits the premium gives you, it gives you a few extra insights about the business, which are a little hit and miss, to be honest. It gives you more information about who's viewed your profile, and we'll discuss that a bit later. And the big one of why I've always liked it, but this might not be the case for many of you, is unlimited people browsing. So unlike most social media networks, LinkedIn provides a plethora of really good quality information, right? Because it's people's professional life. They want to present themselves in the best way, but it's also presenting themselves as truthfully as possible. So I was often hitting what is known as the search cap. LinkedIn doesn't tell you what this search cap is, but it does exist. And I was constantly hitting it, about 3 weeks into the month. So that was a benefit for me. I would hesitate to guess that most of you will not reach that point. So before I show you what I've used very successfully to get a connection request accepted, because that's the aim here, right? We're looking to connect with people. I want us all to have a go. So I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes to write a sample connection request to someone you want to hire you. It could be a potential coworker. It could be a department head, also known as the hiring manager, or it could be a company recruiter. I want to particularly call out the hiring manager. A lot of people get confused on this term. The key thing with the hiring manager is the person who makes the decision. The recruiter, whether they're external or internal to HR, isn't the hiring manager because they don't make the final decision. The final decision is the person who you're going to be working for. That's who's known as the hiring manager. Now, you've only got 300 characters. So have a go, jot down some notes, and in a couple of minutes, I'm going to call on you guys to share what you think would be a good sample connection request to someone who wants to hire you. "300 characters. It's very short. And just as a side interest, I have run the numbers. I've run the numbers at scale. A connection request with a message is accepted about 3 times higher, at a higher rate, than if you don't have a connection request. So it is valuable to do, but it's important to do it in the right way. Potential coworker, a department head or hiring manager, or a company recruiter. Anyone thinks they've got one that they can share? I know I put you all on the spot here. Be hard to think of. This is what I think of every day, literally. New ways to send a connection request that gets accepted at a higher rate.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it you said there's 300 characters available? Is it better to pardon?
Yes, 300 characters, yep.
Yeah. Is it better to use less or to use all 300? Is there a statistic on that as well?
Generally speaking, the jury's still pretty much out on that. I've done it with almost all 300. I've done it with really short. Statistically, it hasn't seemed significant one way or the other. When I then compare the language that's used, that's where the statistical difference starts coming out. So yes, I will show you. I will show you guys an example of what I've used, and it may surprise you. It's still my best performing one to date, and I'll also talk about some examples that work appallingly. Again, it doesn't have to be fully formed. Don't be shy. I'd love to hear from some of you.
I'll go. I wrote, be a library friend, raise donations and memberships, looking for a fundraiser to work with libraries for pro bono.
Thank you, Susan. Really good attempt. You know what's going to be the issue here? You make your ask too early.
Oh.
So the key here with your connection request, your sole aim is to have it accepted. We can then talk about afterwards, as I mentioned in the daily activities, keeping the conversation going. But the problem you'll find is when you put your ask first, of like, I'm looking for fundraisers, you're going to be viewed as, oh, this is just another person asking me for something, or pitching me, or selling me. That's a very quick, fast track to having your connection request ignored. And the problem is, it's not that what your message is bad, Susan. It isn't at all. What you're falling victim to is the fact that there are a lot of other people doing this on LinkedIn. There's a lot of people trying to get, I get this all the time. I get a couple of different people. I get people trying to offer me cheaper software development to take on Project Overflow. I get a lot of CPAs trying to pitch their tax accounting service, and I get a lot of recruiters trying to help me with hiring. When they pitch me straight out the gate, I hit ignore straight away. And a lot of people also feel this as well, and the stats do back it up. So it's certainly a good message that you would want to share at some point, Susan, but I would argue you don't want to send it in the request. You want to start the conversation first and then send that message.
I usually try to find something in common in the profile. So I'll say something like, oh, hi, Patrick. I saw your comment to Janet Brown's blog post a few minutes ago. Thought it was an interesting perspective. Let's connect, or something like that.
That's a really good strategy, Norbert. You really want to find that common ground. Any way, whether it's, hey, we know some similar people, or something about what you're doing, or something about, some comment you made on a piece of content, anything that shows that you're vested in building the relationship rather than just pitching them. It's an unfortunate scourge, and I really hope that it's certainly better than LinkedIn used to be. LinkedIn used to be all pitches back in the day, like I think 2016, 2017, every second message you got was a pitch. So people are slowly starting to get it, but there's still a lot of it. And so we want to make sure we are not tarnished with the same brush.
Patrick, I have two in the chat box right now. So from Molly Jordan, we have, hi, insert name. I'm interested in your company. Thoughts on that one?
So the problem with interested in your company is that it still makes you sound like the rest of the job applicants. Remember what I said about positioning yourself as a consultant. So I would rather approach it with, it seems like we're in the same space or the same industry, rather than interested in your company. Because we're trying to position yourself as the solution to the business problem that they're encountering. That's why they're hiring. Because we've got to remember that we do not want to be lumped in. There are hundreds, if not thousands, if not these days, given the environment we're in, tens of thousands of people applying for certain positions. We cannot be lumped in with that, because the chances, I'm not saying it's impossible, but the chances are you get screened out or you don't get a second look. We want to be the position where you are the only person possible, or at least one of a handful of possible candidates, rather than being lumped in with the rest of everyone else.
And then the other one in the chat box was from Laura Klein, and it is, I would love to connect to see how we can help each other be successful.
That's an interesting one. I've seen it work, but I want to say the last time I saw it work really well was about 9 months ago. And I think, unfortunately, this is where we talk about trends, where we talk about being a victim, unfortunately, of trends. There's a lot of salesmen that have come in, and I think they all got taught the same lesson about relationship building. And so they'll often say something like that, of how we can help each other be successful. The way that I like to counteract that is have some form of specifics, some specific about the business problem. And you can infer that, right? You can infer that based on the job description. So if you know the job description and you know likely what they're looking for in a candidate, then put that as well in that connection request, so that you're not just saying the more generic, help you both be successful. Because otherwise you fall into that case where you're going to be seen potentially as someone who might be trying to pitch them. And we don't want that. The last thing we want is for any of you to be perceived as a salesman. No one should be perceived as a salesman. And my own sales manager would agree. That's all really helpful. So let me show you, and this might surprise you all, the thing that I've used that to this day still gets me on average.
Patrick,
Yes?
before we show everyone, I've actually been asked if we could take a short little break, and we're doing great on time. So maybe we give people and have them be at the edge of their seat before they see what you are about to reveal. And we give people like 2 minutes in case you need to go jump to the restroom, because we are doing really, really well on time. So we'll get back together and see Patrick's big reveal at about 11:20.
Sounds good.
All right. We're at 11:20 now. So go ahead. Continue, Patrick. Thanks for the little break.
No problem. So here it is. And this will surprise you. This message gets me a 78% acceptance rate. Very simple. Really like what you're doing. Would be an honor to be in your network. It is a running joke in my company that at some point in the future I am going to ruin the word honor because of this message. But when we deconstruct it, I think there's a couple of areas of why this is successful. It's simple, but it is giving a clear sense of some sort of rapport. Because remember what I said with these connection requests, we are trying to get them to accept. That's the key. We'll focus on what we do in the direct messages afterwards, and we can build a conversation, build rapport, build the relationship. But really, we just want to make sure they hit accept rather than ignore, or worse, report us as spam. Don't want them to do any of those things. It's a really simple one. Funnily enough, this one itself, I actually met with this gentleman just yesterday. His company does $200 million a year in revenue, and we're about to do business together, all because of this message. Now let's apply this to the job seeking process. When we apply it to the job seeking process, again, use that opportunity to butter up the ego of the person you're speaking to. Really like what you're doing in this industry. Really like what you wrote about something that is involved with your industry. If they've done a recent post, anything that calls out something that they're proud of is a really good tactic in order to get that acceptance. Because once they have the acceptance, then we can start using these direct messages to drive towards what we want. We want either a referral or at the very least a phone conversation with them that maybe will lead to either a job with their company or at least an interview, or they will have referrals for you to someone else that would be looking for what you are trying to be hired for. Then we go on to content. So as I mentioned, we talked about posts. We want to post about 2 to 3 times a week. And the content should be second nature. It should be a theme. Now this theme is going to be based around what are your key achievements? What are the key areas of your expertise that you can show? So this was a video that I was very fortunate that I have a good friend who runs a video production agency. This was pre-COVID. He was able to come to my house and film this. But you don't have to do anything that sophisticated. It can literally be as simple as a smartphone recording. Again, you're only looking for 2 minutes. In this video, it's very simple. All I do is who I'm looking for, which I said was mid-size agencies. What I can do, I'm very good at SEO, press, and content, and with some of my results. I mentioned I've been featured in Forbes and Business Insider. I mentioned that properties under my management had seen double-digit growth in terms of revenue and organic traffic. Again, doesn't have to be long, but 2 minutes really helps not only get your network start working for you, identifying opportunities, but if you've done what I said at the start of these daily activities, connecting with those people, they're going to be surfaced, this content. They're going to see it. If you're posting this stuff, it is once again proving to them that you know what you're talking about, that you are valuable to their organization, and that they should be hiring you. I want to briefly use this opportunity to go through the types of content. So as we mentioned before, we have that featured section. This is where you can put articles or other forms of media. You want to put the things here that are most relevant to what you're trying to create. So as you can see here, I put a book that I wrote. I put the book that's about marketing transformation. This is something that I talk about, and it's something that I offer to the organizations that I partner with. And it's very useful because it drives people to these evergreen content for them to constantly see in a very quick space of time what you're all about. When we compare that to the rest is about top of mind awareness rather than evergreen and ongoing. So we see the short form on the left. We've got pictures in the middle, and we've got video on the right. Now, I'm not about to tell you you need to do all types. It is always useful to experiment, but I also want you all to do what is convenient for you or what you feel most comfortable with. If you feel comfortable with recording quick 2-minute videos with your smartphone, do that. If you're more of a writer, write short form posts. Again, you probably heard it a lot, but consistency is key. That is how you get results. A lot of people will start, they'll go 3 weeks of posting very consistently on LinkedIn, then they'll run out of ideas, and then they'll stop right at the point they might have started to get some results. So if you're going to post, have a backlog of ideas and make sure you choose the format that is comfortable to you and that you can do without having too much friction. And again, what does content achieve? We're trying to get content to achieve direct messages. Trying to either inbound direct messages where someone speaks to you after having seen a post of yours, or when you reach out to someone having seen your content, you're already warmer to them. It's not as cold an outreach, so they already feel familiar with you. Remember at the start of this, when you are connecting with those 40 to 50 relevant people daily, they are going to see this content, or at least a portion of them are going to see this content. That's what we want, because those are the people in the position to give you that next job. So I've talked about it a lot, the DMs. Like I said, employee referrals, these are supreme. From this study in 2019, I believe this was conducted, I note that although Indeed has a higher percentage in terms of applicants, the percentage of hired and the percentage of interviewed is highest for employee referral. Now, you might think that you need to know the person for the employee referral. That's not the case. If you can even spend a little bit of time by using LinkedIn to connect with relevant people and have them refer you, it honestly is very much in their interest to do so. A lot of organizations have found that employee referrals stay longer, more productive, are better qualified candidates, and as a result, give fairly significant bonuses to their own internal employees if they refer someone. And all it takes for them is to literally send across a resume or something as simple as that. I know that I've seen everything from, on the low end, $500 to even more senior positions, it can be into the thousands. It is very little work for an employee to do so for a referral, but it makes a massive difference and it puts you to the top of the pile. That's what we're using LinkedIn here. We're using LinkedIn to get us to that employee referral. We're not applying directly through LinkedIn because, as you can see from the stats, that's still pretty low. We're using LinkedIn to get that employee referral, so we go to the top of the queue, and that gives us the best chance of an interview and therefore a better chance of being hired. That's what we're trying to achieve here. ask for introductions. Like I mentioned, you can see people who you are connected with and people they're connected with. So ask that person for an introduction. Here's an introduction I made for a marketing grad. Very simple. I knew both people. I knew that one of them was a recruiter, one of them was someone looking for a job. Make that introduction. Make it even easier for the person you're asking an introduction for. Like I said with the recommendations, give them a copy-paste. Give them a very short, simple message. This makes it very easy, very minimal work, but it is super valuable. Voice memos. Now, you can use voice memos on your phone. When you go into your messages, there's a little microphone button. You're able to record voice memos to other people that are your connections, first degree connections, for 1 minute. The key value here is that because it is not seen in the same way that text is, it prompts that curiosity. Not only that, it allows you to show your tone and how you speak. We know that text is only 7% of communication. Now, obviously, there are other elements of communication being body language that you're not going to express through a voice memo, but at least you can express tone. And again, you get higher open rates. It's way more responses. And not a lot of people are doing it. I fear that it's because people feel a little uncomfortable about it. Now, bearing in mind, when you send a voice memo, you can record it. If you're not comfortable with it, you can cancel, you can record it again. But I've done this with great effect because it just allows you to demonstrate more of that personality, and it triggers that psychological imperative. Humans are curious creatures by nature. If they can't see, they just see this blue bar with a play button. They have to know what's behind it. It's really effective and gets even higher response rates than just straight text. Really useful tactic to use. And not a lot of people are using it. And I would hesitate to guess that a lot of people will continue not to use it because they still feel a bit awkward about it. So if you can push through that awkward barrier, you can reap the rewards.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead, Janet.
So what are your thoughts on using an outside recruiter? Does it hurt you because the company has to pay them?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't hurt you to use an outside recruiter. I've certainly used a combination of internal and external. What I would say though is that the stats are still pretty tilted in favor of employee referrals. But what I would say is that's not a reason to abandon using an outside recruiter. It's just that don't use that as your only mechanism, right? We're trying to essentially give you as many paths towards getting that job. It does depend on the industry. Some positions, so for example, like technical positions, do rely a lot more on external recruiters. Other positions less so. It kind of depends on the nature of the role, of how hard it is to find someone with the adequate skills.
Great, thank you so much.
No worries.
I'm sorry, Patrick, could you clarify one point about when you use connections? So if you're applying for a job, would you still connect, as you said, through LinkedIn and through requests? Or is that, because that's almost seemed like when you apply for a job and they say no calls, no messages, are you sort of breaking that line by sort of connecting with an employer or even maybe the CEO of the organization as well when you're applying for a job?
Yeah, so here, let me give you a demonstrable example, because you're absolutely right. The current company that I work for had that process. They had an HR representative, and that HR representative said the same sort of thing, no calls, yada, yada. I went around that and went straight to the chief revenue officer because I deduced that they were the one who was likely to be my boss, namely because sales and marketing falls under revenue. So by building the relationship with him directly, that enabled me to get an interview with him directly. And by that stage, the only time I ever spoke to HR was as a, if anything, just the background check. Yes, I was, as you say, Norbert, going around that system, because you've got to remember that HR and internal recruiters are acting as gatekeepers, right? They're trying to act as gatekeepers for their organization. But it's not them who have the business problem. It's whichever department has the business problem. And they're the ones making the hire. They're the ones who are going to need your skills. They're the ones you're going to be working with day in, day out. That's why I very strongly recommend finding potential coworkers, finding that potential boss. The reason why I say potential coworkers before the potential boss is because if your potential boss or manager is going to be fairly senior, you might struggle to get a hold of them. So in that way, I found getting your potential peers is a good way, because then they can surface, hey, here's a good candidate, because they have a vested interest, because they know that they're likely to be working with you if you're hired. So they want to make sure that you're a good person and a good fit as well. And then in addition, they get that referral bonus that I mentioned. Many organizations offer this.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No worries.
There's another question here in the chat, Patrick.
Yep.
Curious about the number of hashtags that you use on posts. Are there is there a magic number, or is there a number that's like too many? Can you speak to that?
I will hold that question because I do have a slide in the tips and tricks on that, if that's okay. All right. And then finally, the 5 minutes of the rest of the time that we spend in the 1 hour a day is on metrics. So what are we measuring? We're checking who's viewed your profile, what are the post views, so of your content, and search appearances. So who's viewed your profile? In the free version, you get the 5 most recent viewers and you get this trend graph, and it provides you with some viewer insights. That is where premium is a little bit of an advantage, in that it gives you the full list of your viewers for the last 90 days. But honestly, you just want to see that, what is the trend of this? Is there anyone interesting? Generally, I would say that the stats here are something to be aware of, that you're getting at least a reasonable amount of profile viewers, and you'll see that the more active you are on the platform, these profile views should rise. But it's certainly not worth paying for premium to get all the statistics.
How do you see that?
So when you go onto your profile, you'll have 3 boxes. It'll have these 3 metrics together. There'll be 3 numbers. It'll be a who's viewed your profile, post views, and then search appearances. Should be between your about summary and your activity. It's usually where it's located.
Thank you.
No problem. Post views. So same thing here. We see the views, and what we're looking for is who's finding us. What companies do they work for? That's really interesting information. What titles? You will generally find that salesperson, the majority of people on LinkedIn are salespeople, unfortunately. And then also, what are their locations? So noticing these trends over time, you can start to see, who am I gaining interest with? Who's seeing my content? You can start to infer, once again, some particularly interesting information from that. Search appearances. So here's what I was talking about. You've got the 3 metrics: who's viewed your profile, video views or post views, and then search appearances. Now, search appearances is what I was talking about at the very start, right? When we talked about how do we stuff keywords into our headline and to our about summary. So when someone searches in LinkedIn's advanced search, like you were doing to find recruiters and potential co-workers, this is where this information starts to appear. You see where they work. That's interesting information. What the searchers do, so what their roles are, business strategist, founder, marketer, whatever that role is. Pay attention to the keywords you are found for. Now, this particularly was when I was positioning this profile to be a writer because I wanted journalists. So it was good that 13% journalists saw this and searched this. Now it tends to be marketing director is the main keyword that I'm found for. That changes depending on what you adjust. But keep an eye on those keywords you are found for. If those keywords that you are found for are matching the type of roles you're going after, that is a sign that you're on the right track. But a broader thing to figure out whether you're on the right track is this free tool called the Social Selling Score or Social Selling Index. You can find it by going to linkedin.com/sales/SSI. And what it does is it shows you how you're positioned against your industry and your network. And if you're doing these activities that I've said today, you should see this score start to rise. So you see it's measured on 4 metrics. Establishing your professional brand. That's essentially how well your profile is optimized. Find the right people. Are you finding the people that you need to be connected to? Engaging with insights, that's how well you comment. And building relationships, that's how a measure of activity in your DMs. They're all very fluffy words, but essentially you should see these metrics go up the more active you are on the platform. And by being more active on the platform, you are able to be surfaced in higher search results on the advanced search. You'll have more people viewing your profile. You'll have more search appearances. You'll have more people viewing your content. But this is a nice little measure for you to keep an eye on of seeing, how well am I performing? Because it's taken daily. Any questions on the daily activities? And after this, I'm going to go through some tips and tricks on the algorithm itself.
We have a question in the chat, not actually related to the daily activities, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. It's from Allison McDonald. So Allison's asking, can we steal another follower's follower? Asked in another way, say George has 900 followers that you know would love to follow your page. Can you somehow download George's contacts or invite them to my company page? Or do I need to individually message each one of these folks to come to my business page?
Yeah, you do have to do it individually. You're not able to, that would be a great tool. I would download that of all of my competitors if that was the case. But no, unfortunately, LinkedIn does safeguard user data from doing that. Generally speaking, the strategy I found works pretty well is not only inviting the right people, but also commenting on those people's posts. Like you say, if George has 900 followers and those followers like his content, then leaving thoughtful, interesting comments on George's posts will lead to a reasonable flow on to you. That's generally the strategy that I've found works. But yeah, unfortunately, you can't download a follower list of another person. You can download your own list, but you can't download someone else's. All right, let's get into some tips and tricks. So you want early engagement. I talk here about early employee engagement, but it's much the same thing. If you have people in your network that you know would like your content, send them a message. You can send your post directly to people saying like, hey, I just posted this, would love your feedback on it, or would love a comment or something along those lines, would love your thoughts. This is really important because the algorithm really promotes the activity that you do in the first hour on your post and decides based on that metric, which they keep very hidden, it's their own algorithm, they say, of how many more people they're going to show it to. So they'll show your post to a proportion of your followers and your connections. If enough people engage, they'll go, okay, this is good content. We'll show it to more people and more people and more people. It's very important to get some early engagement. So think of 5 friends, 5 people in the same situation as you who you could send that to. It's really important to get that early engagement. Article in the comment. So what you'll see here is any sort of URL. Say that you've written a blog post and you've posted it on your personal website and you want to drive people to it to read it. You don't want to post it here in the main body of your post because LinkedIn identifies that you're trying to take people away from the platform. Instead, it's a better idea to paste it down here in the comments. And by pasting it here in the comments, for whatever reason, LinkedIn doesn't ding your post the same way that if you put that same URL here. I've done multiple A/B tests on this, and generally speaking, this post, if I put the URL here in the body, I'm looking at about 1/10 of my usual reach. Whereas if I put it in the comment, I maintain that. So naturally, as you can see, it's a big difference. It's a little quirk. It's a little strange why that happens. But if you are going to share any sort of outside resource, say you're sharing a blog post, your website, a YouTube video you're featured in, whatever it is, better to post that here in the comment and tell people to check out the post in the comments below, rather than post it here and have your post not be viewed by as many people.
In your last slide, you had an @everyone. Who does that go to?
That one, okay, so that was if anyone is familiar with Slack, so that was what I was demonstrating here. So I have a company Slack that I send everyone this post who's a fellow employee of me. So that's why I say if you're in a company, that works great. If you're not in a company and you're looking for a job, the better strategy is send the message to people you know might like it. Slack is a great one because it does notify everyone immediately. I wish LinkedIn had some kind of feature like that, but as I've said before, unfortunately, LinkedIn's tech is not that sophisticated.
Great, thank you so much.
No worries. See more. So you'll notice here on the posts, we have this little grayed out see more. This is also used as an indication by the LinkedIn algorithm of how many people to show your post to. So what it means is you really want to capture people's attention early with the language you use. Generally speaking, I say one of 2 things works. A very bold statement that gets people to agree or disagree with it. Controversy is king on social media. Or at the very least, a strong question. This one particularly in the middle here, live to work or work to live, it worked wonders because a lot of my connections are based here in the United States, obviously where I live, but also a lot of my friends and family and former co-workers from Australia where I was born. And naturally speaking, this just took off. A lot of people had opinions on whether it was live to work or work to live. Something as simple as that. You want people to get curious and click that see more button. Because even if they don't like it, even if they don't comment on the post, it means that they will have given a sign to the algorithm that this is interesting content and therefore should be shown to more people. There are some new reactions. Now, a little hack that I use here is, as you can see, most people use the like. We have the red love heart, we have the green hand celebrate, the yellow insightful, and the purple face curious. Now, as you can all see, all 5 of these reactions are much the same. You know, that you can essentially use them on anything. So the strategy I like to use if I'm trying to get the attention of someone is use one of the reactions that is less used. Because as you can see by the breakdown, they're more likely to notice someone who was using, say, an insightful or a curious than they would noticing the people in the like section. So a nice little hack there to make sure if you're trying to get the attention of someone and warm up that intro before you send them a direct message, a good strategy to use. Again, I've said it before, commenting is king. Don't share. Sharing works on Twitter. Sharing works on Facebook. Sharing does not work on LinkedIn. When you share a post on LinkedIn, you create an entirely new post, as you can see here on the left. And what happens? That new post gets barely any reach. He's got two likes here and 1 comment. And needless to say, one of those likes and the comment is me. I thanked him for doing that. It's still a nice thing that someone does for you, but it doesn't get the same level of reach. Compare that over here to this, where I've got just from a comment, 13 likes, 7 replies. That is seen by a lot more people than a share. So if you're going to do any activity, do commenting, don't do sharing. Switch connect to follow. So again, you'll notice that when someone comes to your profile, there's a blue button that says connect. That's automatic. A lot of people get a lot of spam. It's not ideal to get a lot of spam because the more connections you have that are not going to be valuable to you, the more chance they see one of your posts and don't interact with it. Like we said, there's a small proportion of your followers who will receive a piece of content. And so we want to make sure that more people see it. So we want to, by switching this to follow, the blue button will say follow rather than connect. The only difference between connect and follow is if you connect with someone, you both see each other's posts because you're connected. If someone follows you, they see your posts, but you don't see theirs. It's important to, while we're trying to build our network, we still want to curate our network. Voice messages, as I mentioned, really important, gets a lot of response and allows you to demonstrate your voice, your personality. It's worked wonders for me. A lot of people have assumed I'm American because I work in an American company and I live in America, and then I get to catch them off guard with an Australian accent, but it works wonders. This question was asked earlier, which hashtags to use? Generally speaking, based on my tests, I've seen about 3 to at max 5 hashtags. Anything more and your post tends to be crippled. And the best hashtags to use are the ones that are suggested to you. LinkedIn does a good job of suggesting the hashtags with the largest reach, so better to use those. LinkedIn's hashtags are certainly not as sophisticated as something like Twitter, which actually built its platform around hashtags. So they add a little bit of value in terms of your reach, but not a whole lot. So I wouldn't sweat it too much. Generally speaking, I just use 3 of the hashtags that have been surfaced to me by this suggestive feature. Bearing in mind, even though as we talked about today, we're all looking for, new jobs. Don't ignore alternate opportunities. If someone wants to invite you on a podcast, that can certainly happen. If someone wants to invite you to write for a publication, that could certainly happen. Maybe they want to give you a freelance gig or some consulting work. There are many alternate opportunities. So keep yourself open to that potential. Tagging. Don't tag millions and millions of people. Generally speaking, I've seen about 20 max is what you want to tag. Anything more than that, LinkedIn thinks you're spamming people. So just be careful with that. The document feature. So we mentioned earlier about how you can share documents or PDFs in the featured section. You can also share documents in a post. It's a really useful thing if you've got slightly longer form content. And I've been saying this for a year. LinkedIn Live is coming. It is still in beta. I would argue that I think it's going to be in beta for quite some time, primarily because LinkedIn's technical infrastructure is not up to par. But nevertheless, it is something that is available. You can apply to it. Just don't expect it to come soon. Your better strategy, if you do want to share your message more widely via LinkedIn Live, is to find other LinkedIn Live broadcasters and get on their show. So wrapping up with some key takeaways. We're going to optimize the profile for the problem you solve. That is the key. That is why people will hire you. By having this 1 hour daily strategy, we're staying top of mind for the target companies and recruiters, making sure that they understand who we are, what we do, the success we've got in the past, and why we're beneficial for their company. And remember to treat every conversation you're having as if you were a consultant. Because if you're approaching it that way, you're adding a lot of value to their business and you're making the business case for them to hire you full time, as opposed to just going about, I want a job. And here's my contact details. Please feel free to reach out via email. I know this, again, 2 hours, while it seems like a long time, there are many, many more things we could dive into. I know we have another presentation scheduled, I think in 2 weeks' time, again with Cal Lutheran. I'm very grateful for the opportunity once again. But please, if you do have any immediate questions, feel free to hit me up either on LinkedIn or there's my email address.
Yes, thank you so much, Patrick. We're actually pretty much at the end of time. I do want to ask, if you have time, 2 questions from people who've been waiting a little bit, and then I will put the things that I wanted to share in the chat box. A question from Mark is, he is actually wondering where he could find the recording feature in the headline section, and should the text be written from the first person or third person perspective?
Okay, so the recording feature for the name pronunciation, if you go onto the app and make sure the app is updated, if you go to your profile, there's a little pencil at the top of it. When you click on that pencil, you'll have, I think it'll be name, headline, and then right under that, it should have name pronunciation, and it'll give you an option there to record the 10-second message.
Awesome.
And the other question, sorry, just remind me.
The other question was talking about whether you should be writing in the third or first person.
Yeah, so honestly, there's nothing particularly. I've seen people do very successful with third person. I've seen people do it with first person. My personal preference is first person. I like to use first person because it's less aloof than third person. Third person can tend to keep people at a distance a little. It can sound a little too academic. So I like first person because you can at least put a little bit of flavor of your own personality into it. Hence why as I showed you at the start with the about summary, I say, I'm a senior marketing executive who helps businesses do X. What are you stuck on? It just feels like more of a one-to-one conversation that way, as opposed to doing the, Patrick Ward is this, blah, blah, blah. Patrick has done this.
So before I let everyone off today, it is 12 p.m., but again, thank you, Patrick. All I've been fielding, besides all of the questions throughout this past 2 hours, has been people saying how awesome this is. So, and I can only just reiterate, like, I've been sitting here taking notes, like, wow, I have fumbled a lot on my LinkedIn profile. There are a lot of things that I learned today. But something I really want to point out, particularly for our members who are on this call right now, is our office hours. This is a members only if you are individual or an organizational member. You can access the sign-up sheet right in the chat. I put it in there. I will be sending it to you all through email again. This gives you an opportunity to just be with Patrick for 20 minutes. You could, really implement what you learned today and then meet with him on Wednesday of next week from 10 to 12 and just chat about, okay, so I implemented this, what else can I do? Or any other kind of specific question. So I encourage you, it's first come, first serve. If you are a member, sign up for this awesome opportunity to have one-on-one time with Patrick.
How do you become a member?
Oh, how do you become a member? You contact me, and there's also a link at the very bottom of the chat that my wonderful colleague Dina had put in to sign up for membership. So feel free to contact me, and I will get you set up. Now, I want to release all of you, but before I do, big round of applause. Use that reaction button for Patrick. Thank you so much. And I am really looking forward to having you again in just a little bit on the 24th. So thank you. And I will be sending this recording out too. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. It was a real pleasure.
Bye now.